All right,
Go ahead,
Joan.
Joan.
Yep, you see my screen? Do you see my screen? It says I'm screen sharing.
It looks good to me.
All right. Okay, let me, as David said, the thing at the top. Joan, and begin. All right, there we are. It's not quite being,
Yeah, that's perfect.
okay, kind of didn't go to the beginning. Where is it? This is page 15. Slide show from beginning. I saw it. There we are. Finally, okay. That was a great talk, Roxanne, and it's quite different from my experience. I have never tried going to various universities or small observatories like that so frequently. We've done it a few times, but I do agree, yes, there have often been troubles. What I was putting together was a couple of pieces of information and trying to collect information for people to use in giving citizen science outreach lectures. This is a very important activity for IOTA to advertise ourselves and to get more observers. Citizen science, of course, is basically everything that IOTA does. So it's not just the actual observations and the collection of the data, but it's also all of the work that is done to make the observations and the collection of data successful. So every part of the work done by the volunteers for IOTA is citizen science. I wanted to give some ideas for outreach to people who are enthusiastic about astronomy and who work with IOTA to show the scope of our citizen science activities, to describe some of the resources that are available to people who are giving these presentations and examples on what to include, and also to highlight an IOTA citizen science website that I have prepared. And I've also included on this website a citizen science presentation. This is a citizen science link here for the page, but in addition, at the bottom of the page, the citizen science page right now, there is a link to a page to assist you in preparing your research. It's a citizen science outreach support page. And I've got it hidden down there at the bottom because it's not ready yet. I mean, I was going to wait until after I see if there was input from this particular meeting or people who are watching my presentation before I made it more publicly there, but it is available right now. And at the very bottom of that page is the next one, the boot camp support page. And that's a little more fun in some ways, but I am also preparing an example presentation on citizen science with IOTA, which can be used as is, although it's quite long. I would say it's there for people to modify to fit whatever need they have. Consider deleting what they don't need and adding on what they do need. And if they have suggestions for improvements, let me know and I will try to make them. We want audiences to understand that IOTA members provide these predictions for star occultations. We want to encourage and facilitate the observation and measurement of occultations and eclipses, coordinate observing efforts, because it's not just the individual observation that's important, it's the fact that it's often that the better science comes from being one among many in coordinating the observing efforts to get a collective good result. Also, IOTA members prepare software and information on observing equipment and techniques. Although, as Roxanne said, it can be a little overwhelming when you first get started because there's quite a lot of information. We report and publish observations. We try to teach each other how to observe, how to use the software, how to evaluate the data, and we provide the equipment and software available nowhere else. I would strongly recommend that anybody preparing a presentation tailor it to present to the audience, to what you need. If you don't know if you walk cold into Audience, you don't know what they know about occultations, just ask them. The example presentation has more technical discussions and observing at its end, which may be too much for the less experienced audiences. But the beginning part, which is very introductory material on what is an occultation, is probably not needed if you are giving a presentation to a group of people who are just trying to improve their knowledge, and you can delete those if you need to. Also, I would like to make sure that you make it understood that membership in IOTA or even in the email group is not required for the observations. We collect data from non-members and members alike. We encourage non-members to observe, but we should offer it. And I've got some flyers I prepared, which are available for people to take and use for spreading information. And I make a recommendation here, just from personal experience, not to interrupt your presentation to present videos unless you are very familiar with the presentation equipment, because I've seen so many times where somebody is trying to give a presentation and, well, the video won't play, or it plays on one machine but not on another, and so forth. And so you just sort of fumble around. Don't do that. Wait until at the end of the presentation. You want to provide in this presentation, provide examples of recent successes. And I give examples here, which we've heard about in the last 2 days. So I'm not going to go over this, but I will update the website and update the example presentation that I've prepared to have more in the discussion of the satellite detection and confirmation that we know now than when I wrote this particular page. I think it's kind of important that when we're giving a general presentation that we explain why occultations by near-Earth asteroids are important. Among other things, aside from the danger that they pose to the Earth, that has gotten so much attention, they are things that attract a lot of attention because their passage close to the Earth makes them easier targets for satellite missions. So that also becomes something where we collaborate in campaigns with satellite missions, such as the Lucy mission. So this draws attention from space agencies, scientists, and then eventually the public. And I think you've heard enough from David on what it is that makes these predictions and observations more difficult, as he's described. After all, there's these 2 occultations by Phaethon coming up in November, which are nice, but they are very short, only 2 seconds. And then there's even 2/10 of a second. I'm sorry, yes, 2/10 of a second. And then there's even more information that we can talk about from the Phaethon and Apophis, which were 2 NEAs that were recently observed, where Apophis was, of course, had that very successful observing campaign that reduced the hazard potential to be extremely unlikely, although it will pass very close to the Earth in 2029. And of course, that will raise a lot of attention. I can see the headlines coming right now about how it's, it's coming straight at us. After all, I have seen recently a headline about how the new large comet is aiming right at us. It will pass very close, 10 AU. So. There's a wealth of information on these, and I give the links to David's information in the website that I'm preparing, so that you don't have to go very many places to get this information. I suggest that people giving general presentations give the audience predictions for major events, interesting events, events local to the area. You can generate local predictions for the lecture site or wherever it is that you happen to be with Occult 4. You can get asteroid path data through Occult Watcher. And you should look into places like Steve Preston's list of good events to find bright observations that would be bright occultations of bright stars. It would be easier for for introductory audience, introductory observers to see bright stellar occultations, bright occultations by the moon. There are, of course, these events that have particular significance that are going to be really difficult. The Apophis event coming up on September 22nd, 27th, which will have a maximum duration of 200ths of a second. I think that's going to be almost impossible for most of us. Phaethon has multiple opportunities, all difficult. And also Lucky Star spacecraft mission events, which have a history of giving the first notice that they are interested in us trying to observe occultations to support them with very little lead time. So it's hard to prepare a campaign, but if you know one's coming, it's useful to mention it. Oh, and here's just the Apophis event, which David discussed. And here's the websites where you can find these bright occultations, these ones to highlight. They're good places to find ones that are the easiest to observe. And of course, I did those links again in the website that I've prepared, the web page I prepared under occultations.org. You should describe to the audience the observing equipment that's suitable, but based on their audience level. You can recommend the data capture and recording techniques that they could use and suggest techniques for observing. If you want, I would suggest you can demonstrate equipment, but try to do it after you talk, not doing your talk, and maybe show videos of the equipment set up and used. Make the point that many people who come to like conventions or say NEAF or others already own scopes that could be used for observing. It's the rest of the kit that they don't have. And we want to make the point that good observing can be done with relatively modest equipment. You don't have to own these nice big telescopes with the great paramount mounts. You can also use a standard old-fashioned push mount Newtonian and still get good data. And you might want to encourage beginning observers to practice their techniques with lunar occultations. Of course, even experienced lunar observers can use an occasional practice, and they do provide better opportunities than just waiting to test equipment and software than just waiting for the asteroidal occultations. And of course, if they do observe a lunar occultation and get a timing for it, they do have value, and their observations should be reported. So observers need from us assistance in determining the suitable equipment, the predictions for the events, instructions on how to use the software, identification of opportunities for observing practice, and most important of all, encouragement. And if you are in a general audience, you're going to come across people who want to help, but they can't or won't observe. There's also many non-observing activities that are a part of IOTA, although observing experience certainly has aids in understanding what's needed. For one thing, developing equipment or software. Sometimes people are more interested in just doing that rather than actually doing the actual observing. Or if somebody already has an observatory or wants to put one together, they could set up an automated observatory. And I have to admit, I'm really jealous of Bill Hanna's automated observatory. I don't know if we'll ever be able to have something equivalent of our own, but I was very impressed with that. And we have a couple other things I mentioned: website maintenance, one, and outreach activities would be another. So I've got files of the posters for on IOTA activities and an IOTA floor banner that are available for printing. And we also have a large IOTA banner, which is, I can't see my own screen, so I don't know, but it's behind me. It's hanging behind David and me. And you can borrow that from me if you want. The citizen science and campaign pages on the Occultations website have more information And I've prepared some flyers which are available on, now it's a special page called flyers, but the links are there to them on the outreach support page and the citizen science page, as well as a flyer on where to find the software and links to predictions. So I would say end your presentation with predictions for easily observable upcoming events in the area and leave them with something physical, a membership flyer, a list of predictions, a list of software. As I said, the flyers are there for you to print. And you might suggest a group occultation boot camp to hone observing skills. And I might also add, of course, these are all my personal recommendations. They are not official pronouncements from IOTA. And I give a shout out to anybody who gives occultation outreach presentations. They are not necessarily easy. Okay. So,
Thank you very much, Joan. Go on with your next presentation.
so
A
it'll
quick
take
question, Joan, before you go on, if you got a moment.
Sure.
I know several years ago we used to have shirts, polo shirts with the IOTA emblem on it, and
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, we
yeah,
haven't done that for a while. We
I-
had a hat for a while, but that got to be really difficult to continue.
This is Ted.
if we could
I
do
sent
that-
an email yesterday to the guy who has the embroidery template for that. I haven't heard back from him,
Okay.
but as soon as I do, I'll let people know. We'll put together an order. I'll coordinate an order for anybody who would like a shirt or a hat. They're in the neighborhood of $20 a piece.
Yeah, I mean, just because, you know, when we go and like Joan, I go to schools, I do Cub Scouts. I mean, I'm always pushing the IOTA, you know, our citizen science program. So having a new fresh shirt would really help. So thank you.
Mine's worn out.
Yeah.
Long ago.
I'd like to make a little comment. I volunteer at the Air and Space Museum in DC, and they're in the process of redoing the entire museum. And I can't hear you, Joan.
No, I'm talking to David. Go on.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I usually volunteer through one of the galleries exploring the universe. And I know that they are going to put a section in that on citizen science. And I keep trying to get them to let me give them some input on that. And one of the things that I do want to get them to put information on, besides, of course, AAVSO, is IOTA. And I will push them on that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing is that it would be nice, I don't know whether it exists, but on the website, there should be, you know, a section there detailed on the various equipment and the various software and how to use it. It's almost like printing a book.
Gee, you just gave me the most wonderful introduction to my talk.
Oh, wonderful. Glad to be of assistance.
Okay. This is a little idea I had, a cute title for something that people do. And I think, Roxanne, you are, in a sense, doing this sort of thing. I called it a boot camp for occultation observers. And this particular image in the background is in Yogyakarta before the Juliet occultation of May 26th in 2015, where David and I, but more David than me, was busy teaching them how to use the mighty minis to try to observe this occultation, which I think we didn't get any data. We had thunderstorms and rain. We tried. So what I'm talking about is a daytime session or two learning how to use the supporting software, an evening session learning how to observe with one's own equipment, preferably in a group session so observers can help each other, an opportunity to improve observing skills, and a way to encourage the use of available prediction and reduction software. It also is something that is done by SWERI, for example, as a session to prepare for specific high-profile events. I don't expect this to provide instant expertise, but it is to have observers gain some experience with the observing applications and the software that supports the observing. And just had a couple of suggestions for when you might schedule something like this. During a lunar passage through denser star fields, so that give multiple opportunities for observing and recording events. These don't have to be associated with IOTA annual meetings. If you might consider having multiple sessions. In the evening observing session would be in between daytime sessions on prediction software and data analysis. And David pointed out from his past experience the different times of lunar passages through the Milky Way, and targeting the evening passages because it would be much easier to get people together in an evening session than a morning session, early morning session. The northern Milky Way passages are generally in April, and the southern Milky Way evening packages are generally in November. And you can do this anywhere with anyone. An observing session would need a darker sky with nearby parking and access to power and maybe Wi-Fi. You would have discussions of software use and software training requiring individual access to personal computing equipment, Wi-Fi, or prior downloads of the necessary software. So that would mean necessarily, you probably need power, you probably need the Wi-Fi or some way of accessing the internet. You could do software discussions and software training via online, which of course is we see a lot of with IOTA and iMovie, but that's more challenging, especially when you're trying to do multiple different pieces of software. And it'd be nice if you have group sessions that you could have a mixture of observing experience in the participants from none to quite experience, but that's not necessarily a requirement. It just would make it nice. And the experience could help the inexperienced a little more. I would say that try to arrange that each participant has access to a Windows computer to operate the software. And yes, it is, I agree with Roxanne, the equipment, the software is very Windows centric. And I don't know how to get around that problem because I don't see that this software is going to run on something as small as an Android, but I could be wrong. A telescope and equipment to record the data, and some sort of a field telescope that's portable and doesn't require power or Wi-Fi or cell phones. So you also want to have GPS access, the GPS timestamping for the data, and small Windows cabinet or computer to record the data. And I really would like to recommend that visual timing methods be discouraged. I know some of the documentation on observing occultations still spends what I consider to be a little too much time on in discussing visual timing methods. That was what we had to do when we didn't have any better way, but using a stopwatch and time signals coming over the air just don't give the accuracy that we need today. And I have a suggested agenda, which I'm not going to go through this right now. It's out there on the website. And I will also, by the way, put this presentation as a download from the website too. So before observing a session on installing and using the equipment, on the installing and using the software, how to go running through how to generate your predictions. And second, evening session practicing the observing, setting up the scopes, capturing some data, learning pre-pointing or finding a target. That, by the way, it's something I always have a hard time with. And then finally, a data reduction session, hopefully with data captured in the evening session, but if that didn't work out, use pre-recorded data from some previous sessions, and how to do a report spreadsheet, how to report lunar occultations and grazes and so forth. And I suggest that we start trying to do this with sessions of small sessions with a few people, which David's already set up one that we did with a couple of people from Applied Physics Lab, but we decided they needed more because, well, our observing sessions were rained out, but we need to continue that. It's nice to have a leader or a teacher on this, but sometimes groups may be able to self-organize and not need a particular single person to do the teaching. And organize it as a club activity if clubs are encouraged to do that. If we have occultation, be able to start up doing occultation campaigns again, we might be able to set one up before an occultation campaign. And I would really like to know how well this works out. If people think these suggestions are helpful or not, if they have recommendations for future ideas, camps, and what would you like to have future organizers know? And all of the software can be found online. Most of it is free or very low cost. Many of the programs have user guides or how-to documents, YouTube tutorials. The software packages are available via the occultations website. And the support page, which I'm writing, will have links to software packages. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. User guides, tutorials, and there's some that I've got there that I think are very, very nice. And again, this is more of my personal recommendations and suggestions, not official pronouncements from IOTA. And these are really not easy to do, so I'm very, very grateful to anybody who arranges, supports, and participates in this sort of a camp. And that's all I had.
Well, thank you,
So-
Joan. Any questions for Joan at this time?
Yes, Joan, I'd just like to, I've done a citizen science thing. I'm in Connecticut, by the way, Rick Bria. It's not, it might not sound as attractive, but I've actually done these learning sessions via Zoom, and it actually works well because people don't have to travel from all different places, and during the session, I'll actually have a student say, Mr. Bray, you forgot to click on block integrate or something like that. So it can be done via Zoom. I wouldn't rule that out either. But of course, all your suggestions are fantastic. And a lot of them I've integrated, but don't discount. Yeah.
I've participated in Zoom sessions. Of course, Tony George has given multiple ones on PyMovie and PyOTA, which are very helpful, but never actually run one myself via Zoom. So yeah, that would be
An actual occultation via Zoom. It's actually pretty cool. So the students get a big kick out of it.
Rick, by chance, are those your sessions? Are they recorded somewhere, like on a YouTube channel we can watch?
No, they are not. They probably should have been. I could have recorded them. Zoom has a record.
Curious.
I really wanted to talk to you too, because I do very similar things like you do. I 5 different observatories, but I'm going to email you separately. I'm not going to talk.
Okay, sounds great. And I do like the comment you brought up about, you know, hold it, stop. I clicked on the wrong item.
Yeah.
Because believe me, guys, I'm watching the PyMovie video, the online Zoom sessions. And I don't know if my version is different than your version or what, but you guys, sometimes the cursors, the mouse just doesn't follow fast enough. And by the time you click on something, the screen changes. I'm like 3 or 5 seconds behind you just because of the delay in Zoom. And I'm like, oh my God, where do I start? You know, so I don't want to appear stupid. I'm just going to sit in the background and watch. But that's one thing to always remember when we're going through these tutorials online. It's, you know, you got bandwidth speeds and constraints. So it's like, you know, click, let your audience catch up. Tell, you know, what part of the application, you know, am I going to file load, or am I clicking on tools, preferences, to help us keep track of where you're at? Because a lot of you are just, you're doing this subconsciously. You're so good and you make it look so easy. Just remember to, you know, take it down to the 101 level here and just let us see where you are in the application. And I think that would help us a lot.
I actually have documents that I follow because, you know, I'm working different observatories. They have different equipment. And I send those documents to the students and they review them. And that's why they're able to say, hey, you forgot to do, you know, blank, whatever it happens to be, because they have the documents in front of them. They're following along with me, you know, with pictures, you know, with screens grabs and everything in the documents and what have you.
And I also find that also, you guys been doing this for so long, and that jargon is just ingrained in you, and you know when you're talking again what you're doing, you're subconsciously clicking on things and adjusting stuff, and I'm, you know, and in many ways, especially like with Pi Movie, just because I just don't use it often enough, yeah, it's just kind of hard to keep up sometimes.
And it improves, and it's, you know, Pi Movie's not what it was, you know, a year or two ago.
A year ago, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So super. Well, thank you. I think these were great, Joan. I really appreciate your suggestions and bringing up the citizen science and the boot camps and such. I think they're great in bringing new people on board, and just giving a refresher for, you know, some of us that need it.
And I think it would be useful if IOTA could make videos of a lot of this and put it all on YouTube. And then people
All
can
the
look at it as
presentations-
often as they want.
There is a tutorial, there are a number of tutorials there is an IOTA YouTube section.
Okay, all right,
There is?
Yes, there is. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can send a link to it.
I will have
Has,
to look at that.
it's a whole section on IOTA videos, and the first section is tutorials, and then there are sections showing lunar occultations and asteroidal occultation video
Okay.
examples.
Good.
Can you show us where those are? I don't know if that's Roger. I can't tell who was talking.
That's
Probably
David.
just go to YouTube and just search for IOTA. It probably would help them pop up there.
There are a bunch of other IOTAs in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not the only
Brad
ones
That's
with
true.
that name.
Occultations, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And type in, you know, Piot or Pi Movie and see what you get.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
right.
not what I expected.
You can get to those through the Pi Movie and IOTA download site on occultations.org.
Okay.
Well, I got high when I first used Bob Anderson's Pyote software, but for most people, getting high on Peyote means something altogether different.
If I could toss in 2 cents, my name's Kevin Hartnett, and recent member, and retiring actually from NASA soon, and have been doing a lot of astrophotography, but would like to do more occultation work. It is pretty intimidating to go to the IOTA site and look at all the information. And I don't know how to solve this problem, but I'll toss this thought out that, as was already mentioned, the field changes quickly. So, you know, the camera recommendations 2 years ago maybe are different from now, or the software is different. And I found that, I'm finding that honestly challenging as I look on the IOTA site. I feel like I have to read everything and kind of glean a little from this and glean a little from that. But it would help, I think, somehow if things could be dated better. And so what I found very helpful, and I think he's online here, he could even you know, put in 2 cents himself. George Viscami's been a big help. He wrote
Yes,
an article that was
Yes.
dated recently, and that caught my attention, you know, which really laid out, here's the equipment you need. And so that was very helpful. And then I was able to link with him via email, and he's been a big help.
yeah, that is available through IOTA. It's on our documents page.
Right.
And I point that out on the boot camp site.
But I
Thanks.
think what is lacking in the way of a YouTube is what you'd find for any other of many different astrophotography sites is, here's a guy, you know, videotaping himself. I'm gonna go out tonight and try to record the occultation of such and such a star. And then you see him, you know, roll the scope out. Here's a picture of the camera and here's the software. And I don't think there's anything like that.
Actually,
Well,
this is Steve. There is one, but it was a guy in Australia who
Okay,
recorded an occultation while at dinner from his observatory in the backyard and did the reduction and everything.
excellent.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we just need to track it down and get the link posted somewhere where it's easily accessible. And that's
Okay,
usually, that's
not
one of
wonky.
our barriers. If anybody wants to volunteer to help out with collecting a lot of this stuff and getting it organized, we've got a place for you to put it. It's just mainly a lot of us kind of get stuck with the things we're already doing and we don't get to some of that. Thanks for the suggestion on dating things. I should make the dates more apparent in some areas, particularly George's document, which is a recent document and very helpful. I should put that the date right up there on the link and the main page instead of having to get it out of the document itself.
Yeah, I'll say, not to prolong this, but it's not clear to me, looking at the IOTA website and the many pages in there, whether it's recommended to use the LI movie software for lunar reductions or the PY movie software, or whether there's different opinions on this. It seems like on the group's discussion, there's different opinions. So,
And there are different tools. Different people use PyMovie, LiMovie, and Tangra. All three are good tools, and in fact, some have their varying strengths and weaknesses depending on the. So we have up to now have not made a point of particularly recommending one versus the other, because they're all good tools, and different people tend to settle on the one that works best for them, or maybe best for a particular scenario. That might be a
Actually,
good thing for me to include on the page.